everyone, welcome to today's episode where we dive into a truly fascinating and heartwarming topic, the incredible healing power of animals. Did you know that horses and dogs can actually help us heal emotionally, physically, and even spiritually? Well, today I had the privilege of speaking with Colleen Campbell, an expert in equine and canine assisted therapy. Trust me, this conversation will change the way you look at animals and yourself. So let's jump in and discover how they can teach us to connect, heal, and thrive. Hello, everyone. Today we have an expert in equine and canine assisted therapy, a field that merges the healing power of animals with human emotional and physical well being. She has dedicated her career to exploring how animals like horses and dogs serve as co teachers in transformative therapy sessions. I welcome you, Colin. Thank you so much for choosing to come on this podcast and to share how you do all this. When I met her for the first time few months back, and when I heard about this, it sparked a curiosity that stayed with me. And today I'm thrilled to have Colin here with us to share this incredible journey. Welcome. Thank you so much again. And I'm getting straight into the question. Like, I want to know how this journey started, how you have decided that you want to start this kind of assisted therapy, what inspired you to explore this path. Was this always your path, or you were doing something else and something inspired to explore this path?
So thank you for having me. I am happy to be here. It's really exciting. So I was born horse crazy. I was 2 years old when I started asking for a horse. So my parents finally caved when I was 11 years old and let me get riding lessons. So horses right from the beginning have always been a huge part of my life. And going through high school, I'm not really sure if anybody has a wonderful high school experience completely, but mine was not great. But having those horses really kept me together as a person and kept me healed and allowed me to have a space where I belonged and didn't have to be anything other than myself, and was allowed to just be me. And I could be as quirky and weird and horse obsessed as I wanted to when I was at the barn. So I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the foundation of what I do now, was spending all of those hours and days with the horses where it was just me and the horse, and there was nobody else around, because I learned how to ride at a barn where there weren't any other kids riding. So it was just me hanging out at the barn all day by myself with the horses. And that was amazing, just being able to be quiet and be still and breathe and not have anybody, not worry about what anybody was thinking about me or judging me, or, worrying with if I was going to upset anybody with anything I did. So without knowing, my foundation started when I was about 11 years old, when I started taking riding lessons. As I progressed through, I did go to college for equine studies, and I went to UMass Amherst for that. And I had planned on becoming a trainer and an instructor and owning a barn and doing a more traditional route with horses. But I was really lucky to meet a mentor in college. His name is Joe Delano, and he taught me how to ride much differently than I had ever been taught to ride before. It was all about the horse and what the horse was telling me, and paying attention to what the horse was trying to communicate. And the most frustrating sentence that he ever said to me, which became the most life-changing sentence once I figured out how much it connected to everything I do, was, "It's not the horse, it's you." And that was the first thing that really got me thinking that if I want to change, and he did say this to me, if you want to change in your horse, you need to change yourself. And he was thinking and talking about riding specifically. But as I progressed through and did more training and started teaching people, I realized that it's not the horse, it's you, connected to everything in life. And if we want to change in anywhere in our lives, we have to change ourselves. So that was the next step in this, and it progressed through the traditional lessons and training into a horsemanship yoga program that I did, teaching people to be more aware of themselves. And as I was teaching these things, I was noticing that people were coming to the barn, and I had a specialty with people that had some fear of riding, whether they were timid riders or they had just gotten back into it and hadn't done it for a long time, or they'd had a bad fall. That tends to be my niche. And I was noticing that as these people were coming to ride with me, and as they were doing lessons, they would start coming and they were very worried about making mistakes. They would be very nervous around the horses doing the wrong thing. They wanted to make sure they were doing everything right. They tend to have a body language of the slightly rounded shoulders and slightly downcast gaze. Like they weren't walking in head up smiling. It was more of a, okay, I hope I do everything right. I hope I don't mess up. And as they were taking these lessons, I was noticing as they're coming to the barn, they're standing up taller, they're talking more direct, they're smiling more, they weren't worried about making mistakes. And that gradually morphed into what I do now.
Wow, that's amazing. And the sentence, what you said, is such a profound sentence that first thing is to understand yourself. So, can you put a little bit more light about what you understood when your mentor told you this, and what has changed in your life after him telling you these things?
Yeah. So when I started riding with him, I started from a traditional, I grew up on the East Coast of the States. So I grew up in Massachusetts, and there weren't any Western riding places. So it was all English, which is very traditional and it's very structured. And it's very much, you have to look and dress and act a certain way around the horses and when you're riding. Otherwise, you're not doing it right. So I came from not only this very structured riding method, but I also came from the very structured lifestyle of you have to go to high school, you have to go to college, you have to do all of these things, otherwise you're not doing it right. And you have to behave a certain way, otherwise you're not doing it right. So I came from this background of you have to do what everybody tells you to do or you're not doing it right. And when I started working with Joe, it became more about looking at how I was making the horse feel, and what I was doing was causing the horse to react to. So it was no longer, you have to look pretty and look this certain way on the horse. It was now, you have to be an effective communicator, and you have to make sure that what you're doing is beneficial to the horse, which isn't, and usually not, the way that we are taught to ride, where we're rigid and we're stiff, because that doesn't communicate to relaxation, softness, and connection. So when he said that, it was directed just to my riding, but that shift then started to go into other areas of my life of, all right, I did something, there was a reaction, how do I change that? How do I, and of course there were plenty of early 20s mistakes and things that I did that could have been done better. But as I went, I started putting that into the rest of my life of, if I want a change somewhere else, how do I change myself to get that? And I started to learn that it was more and more about me and less about everybody else. So that was a huge shift. And then as I was working on this, I got really interested in trauma and the effects on the brain, and how all of these things that we go through our whole lives, all these little things, they call them little T traumas, of the daily stress and bullying in school and not fitting in. And, you know, I grew up as a Gen X kid, so it was a latchkey generation. We were on our own all the time. And just that growing up like that promotes a certain type of personality that has a lot of really cool attributes, but it's also got a lot of neglect trauma built into it. So now learning about that and all of these things of how they affected the brain, how they affect the nervous system, and being more and more aware. And that's been the biggest shift from taking that sentence directly with my riding and then teaching people how to ride directly with that, and then moving into the rest of my life and getting more and more nuanced of not just how do I make a situation better, but how do I make myself feel better? How do I make my nervous system more regulated? How do I make my brain heal? Like all of these things, and it's all in me.
Wow. So was this taught? How did you learn all of this about like the trauma related to the brain and how to heal? Is it through the experience you learned, or is there, or through your mentor, or through the degree which you did?
So the degree um, introduced me to my mentor because I went to a college and was looking for a place to ride, and he was nearby. So that was the college connection, and the college, it gave me a good foundation for like equine knowledge of basically how to care for a horse nutritionally and that sort of thing. But I was already doing that, so it kind of, in the grand scheme of things, it did very little for what I do now, but it was an important step in where I was at the time. And I built a lot of confidence through that. I had to teach courses with other college students, so it gave me the confidence to teach. So it was a very important foundation block, but it didn't really do anything for what I am doing now. My mentor was the first person who really started getting me thinking about if there's an issue with the horse, it's not the horse's fault, it's mine. And being responsible for whatever was happening in my horse by changing myself, whether it was being the calm center that my horse needed because they were nervous, and calming myself so they could then become calm, whether it was, if they weren't turning the way I wanted them to turn, adjusting my body so I was allowing them to turn and wasn't blocking them with anything, any pressure on a seat bone or tightness in the leg or rigidity in the shoulder. All of these little things were all the things I met from or learned from my first mentor. And then as I got interested in the yoga, that was another person that I connected with that was a great yoga instructor. And she taught me a lot about breathing and centering, and even more about being in tune with my body. And then from there, I jumped down the rabbit hole of the equine assisted healing because that modality was just starting to come out and become popular. So I started learning more and more about that and more about the service dog industry, and really knew I wanted to move into that. And so from there, I just started learning more and more. I was reading constantly, watching podcasts, watching, any sort of documentary, anything I could find on equine assisted therapy and service dogs and how they were helping people heal. And then I knew that I wanted to add a brain piece to it, but that wasn't my specialty. So in 2015, I met my business partner, Chris Carl, and she is a certified licensed LADAC 1 therapist. So she specializes in the brain and how it heals, how it functions, and addiction. So she was a huge addition to what we did. And she brought me to the next level of understanding more about the brain. And now there's just so much out there. Like I've read Bessel van der Kolk, I've Gabor Mate, Brene Brown. Like I follow all of them and just watch as much as I can to learn as much as I can about the brain, the nervous system, and how this all fits together.
Wow. So, how do horses and dogs function as a co-teachers really? Like, can you explain the dynamics? Like, okay, you explained the dynamic with the horses, but maybe more light on the dogs, how they help.
So they're both fantastic teachers, and they both help us to be more present and more aware. Because when we are very present and we're aware, and we let go of all the other thoughts that are in our head that are constantly distracting us, and we focus just on the task at hand and what we're doing with them, they both respond to us in ways that give us that connection and that feedback in real time. So we can see whether you're working with a horse or a dog, as you're walking them or riding them, if you start thinking about something else, they start thinking about something else. And all of a sudden you have no connection with the animal. And so in order to get that connection back, you have to clear your mind so you can start thinking about what you're doing again and start getting those mental imagery is really important for when you're riding and working with animals, because having that idea and that picture in your mind allows your body to translate to the animal you're working with what you want to do and what you want to do next, because they are so subtle and they pick up on such little changes in us that whether it's a telepathic thing and we're actually sending these pictures to them, or it's something that they're picking up in our energy or our body language, it doesn't really matter. because it feels like magic to us, because we are just not nearly as in tune as they are. So being present is a huge gift that these animals give us. And they also, both the horses and the dogs, are incredible mirrors for what's going on for us internally. So a lot of times when we are distracted, or we're going through burnout, or we're going through trauma, or something is happening, we shut off our emotions because they're too hard to deal with, whether it's too painful or if it's just something we can't allow ourselves to deal with because of our mindset of what's going on at the time. But when we do that, we disassociate. So we're no longer connected to anything in our body, because you can't shut off the bad feelings without shutting off the good feelings. So if you're hurting and you don't want to feel sad anymore and you stop paying attention to that feeling, it also requires that you stop paying attention to all the other emotions. So we become very detached from ourselves. And when we're with the animals, sometimes when we're working with them, we're not aware of what we're feeling and what we're putting out, but the animals are. So the animals, again, give us direct feedback and in real time of what our body is saying to them. So most of what we say is not verbal. Even though we are very verbal creatures, there's something like 10 or 20% that's actually the words that we say. And the rest of it is body language, energy, tones, inflections, and all these other things that we do. So the animals pick up on that other 80 to 90% of what we're saying and reflect it back to us in their own response. So these horses and dogs become our like little furry therapist. They're showing us, hey, you got this thing going on you might want to work on, or what you're saying right now with your body and energy is not making me feel good and I'm going to go away. So if you want them to come closer, you start to pay attention to what's going on and how do you shift that. And when you do shift it, the animals come back right away. So it gives you that ability to feel again with somebody or like a being that doesn't have any judgment and allows you to make as many mistakes as you need to find that spot again where you're regulated, where your nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system is kicked in and you're in a relaxed state so that they can be around you, because then they feel safe when you're regulated. So they're huge for allowing us to be in touch with ourselves. And they also allow people to bring down their walls because they don't have any judgment and they don't have any, they don't have any ideas or expectations about what should be happening. They take us as we come to them, and they will love us as we love them. So if we're going to be very rigid and strict and say, okay, I'm coming in, we're doing this, and I'm leaving, it's going to be a very superficial, not a great relationship. If we come in with the idea of connecting and really paying attention to what they're telling us and trying our best to understand their language, they will allow us to make all of the mistakes we need to make so that we can learn a language that we can communicate to each other, and then we can connect. And that connection, both to ourselves and to another being, that's the first step in healing everything. So they're amazing.
Beautiful. So I have a pet, and I have learned from him how to be in a present moment. Every time I look at him, I understand, oh my God, like he is sending me signals when I'm not in the present moment. So, but are there any simple tips you can tell to our audience which can apply to them to better connect with their own pets or any animal they are communicating with? Are there any simple techniques you can provide?
Yeah. So animals are mammals, and we fall into that category. We are also mammals. So anything we are working on with our horses, dogs, cats, whatever, will translate to our relationships with people. So this is a really cool thing. And one of the first things that we can do, and one of the most important things we can do, and people may have heard of this as called holding space. So in the healing world, somebody might say you're holding space for somebody, or you're holding space for yourself, or you're holding space for your animal. And what it means is simply being present and being in our own bodies and aware of our own emotions enough to allow somebody else to do the same. And in order to hold a sacred space or a healing space, what that means is that we can start to work on grounding our energy, doing deep breathing, doing things that make us feel good. So whether it's reading a book and getting lost in the book where we can clear our mind, getting lost in music. If we play an instrument, that's awesome. If not, just listening to our favorite songs, anything that promotes that really happy, fuzzy feeling in ourselves is a way to connect better with our horses, our dogs, and the other people in our lives, because that is bringing our nervous system back into a parasympathetic state where we're relaxed. We're letting go of the stress. We're able to breathe. It allows our organs to relax and all of our muscles to relax. And that is the first step to being a good pet owner, being a good friend, being a good horseback rider, is being able to find that state of relaxation. Another thing to do is to be very aware of what our animals are telling us. So if our animal does something, looking for the reasons why they did that. So a lot of people don't know the finer points of equine and canine communication. So whatever we can do to encourage ourselves to learn more about that and to learn what these subtle signals are that these animals are giving to us will allow us to not only understand our animals better, but because we're understanding our animals better, if we start working on ourselves, it helps us to understand ourselves better, and then in turn helps us to understand our other relationships better. So those two things right there are huge. Learning animal communication, the body language, and the energy that they connect to, and being able to give ourselves that nice, calm, sacred space.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is, I almost feel like a spiritual experience every time. Getting back to how it started, so you said like in 2015, if I'm not wrong, you found your partner and then your journey started. So what is your goal with what you do? How your day to day look like, and what is your goal like?
Yeah.
Where you want to take this thing?
So, as you said, it is a very spiritual thing. And as I get into it more, I become more spiritual and see how much connection there really is in everything in the world and all around us, and how, promoting these like big ideas of world peace really starts with inner peace. It starts with ourselves being peaceful and ourselves being happy. And that right there, healing ourselves, is a huge piece to animals being treated better, humans being treated better, solving pretty much all of the problems in the world. All starts from healing ourselves. So my goal with this, and originally it had started as when I was little, I wanted to rescue animals and I wanted to help animals. And that was my main thing. I wanted to work all day with animals. And as I started teaching the lessons and doing animal assisted therapy and things like that, I started to realize that the more I worked with people, I could help the animals in a better way. Because I could rescue animals out of a shelter and I could place them in the home, and that helps one animal. But if I spent time teaching people how to be better humans, I could help all of the animals that they had at once. So this is my goal, is to now work with people and empower them to heal and teach them as much as I can about the animals' communication with us and how important they are as partners, so that people can start seeing animals as these sentient beings that they are, and as these amazing healers that are so important to our life. Because we've really stepped away with all the technology and working in corporate offices and all the things we do now in our life. We've really stepped away from the old time connection with the earth and working on farms and being with animals every day. And these things that people used to have every single day in their lives, we don't have anymore. So the goal is now to build a program that would allow me to influence more people, help more people, empower them to heal themselves by working with their own animals and understanding their own animals and building that connection that way.
So, just a question that came out of curiosity, like, at least in my circle, I know a lot of people who may not know how to be with animals, and they have a very negative connotation, maybe because something happened in their past which was not that great with the animal, and they have like now they have like a thing that, oh, we are scared, or oh, they are animals, like, because I treat a human being or an animal like we are souls, and we are part of that one higher energy. But then I have came across the people who don't think in that way, and they misbehave with the animals. And what you were saying, that you want to first heal the people, because that is so important, so that it is a great relationship with the animals as well. So coming back to my point, like, I was thinking, okay, what about the people who don't have their pets, or who don't have animals around? Is there anything you have planned to do for such kind of people, to bring back that connection, or to, like, whatever thing they are carrying with them, like their beliefs about the animals? Is there anything you plan to do for them, that those beliefs go away, and there's peace around everyone?
Yeah. So with our programs now, these ones are very entwined with animals, but we have plans to build retreats and to bring in music healing and sound healing, and then connect it with animals in a way that's not as close. So people could be standing outside of a fence, so they don't have to be right with an animal, because animals, horses especially, they have a huge electromagnetic field, and their heart is much larger than ours, so their heartbeat is much slower than ours. And when the heartbeat is slower, it builds a electromagnetic field that is just peaceful. And as we step closer to them, then our heartbeat starts to try to regulate with their heartbeat, and it relaxes us. So we can do a lot just being around animals. So the programs that we'll have eventually, the retreats, will work on those principles. But people who don't have pets now, they can do a lot of this in nature, like just going out and being around a garden with birds singing. The bird song actually will lower cortisol and relax people, because the bird song is connected to how we developed as humans. Birds will sing when they're safe. They won't sing when there's danger. So hearing the bird song triggers a piece of our lizard brain from way, way back when we developed from Neanderthal, or whatever stage people want to believe, and what it does is it triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, telling us that it's safe. So even if they want to go out and sit on a bench in the sunshine with their feet on the ground with no shoes on, close their eyes and breathe and listen to the birds, that right there is connecting to nature. It's connecting to animals, and it will give them that same connection.
Okay, that's a good thing. Thank you so much for sharing that. From that, I have another question. Like, can you, if possible, share a memorable healing story from your work that profoundly impacted a client or an animal?
So there's so many, but there's one who, she was just very good at explaining what was happening. And she came to us. She had a service dog that she was trying to train, and she hadn't gotten very far with it. She had worked with somebody in the past, and it just hadn't been the right fit for her. So she came to us, and her dog was a little reactive, and she was very disassociated. So she was not in touch with any of her feelings. And she was so shut down that even making a tiny move that's out of the ordinary, like shifting her hips, like wiggling, even that much, would put her in a panic attack. And she had such a fear of being visible. So we started working, and her having the dog and being able to focus on training the dog and teaching her how the dog communicated, how the dog's brain worked, the psychology of the dog, And all of the things that went into training a really good service dog in the focus allowed her to take her focus off of being worried about being seen and put it into training her animal. So she no longer had to think about herself. And by not thinking about herself, she started doing these little movements. And the way the body heals, it holds trauma in our body. So as we move, and the whole somatic healing practices, as we move our body and we shake our arms and we, loosen up, it releases trauma physically. So as she was training the dog, it was starting to release things without her having to focus on them. And she was able to start feeling more and more safe, that it started to allow her to start making these movements consciously. And at first, when she was learning something new, she kept saying how she would feel fuzzy. So basically, she kept disassociating every time she would learn something new because she was so worried about making a mistake. But as she worked more with this dog, she stopped having that. And now she is a completely different person. And she is so happy and so willing to be seen that it's amazing how different she is. And how all these things that she was terrified to do before, she's now like traveling without problems. She's now able to go places without her dog sometimes. Like she's now coming into this place where she's okay with who she is and she's okay being seen, which is such a huge piece of healing.
Beautiful. So you must be meeting so many of the clients, and all of them have their own unique stories and own unique healing journey, and you are helping them. But while helping, has it happened with you that sometimes even you might have gotten affected by their unique journey in a positive or a negative way? So can you share more insight about that?
So, the saying goes that if you want to learn how to do something well, teach it. and it's very true. Like the more I teach, the more I learn myself. And the more I study, the more I see in myself, and the more I'm able to heal myself. And the more I heal myself, the more effective I am as a teacher. So that right there has been a huge thing of just working with people, because, I think the universe gives you what you need to grow. So I always end up having like these times where I'm learning something new. I'm a little bit nervous. I start teaching. I start having some success. I start feeling like, all right, I got this. Things are going really well. And then I get a client that's hard. That's not something I've seen before. It's not somebody I've worked with somebody for. It could be horse, dog, or person. I get all of them because I work with training dogs and I work with training horses as well as doing the equine and canine-assisted therapy. So when I'm starting to feel like, all right, I got this, that's when I get the next one. They're like, okay, time to level up. and I get somebody else or another horse, another dog, another person that challenges me to learn something new, because the things that I know now are not fixing what they're coming with, whatever challenge they have. So it allows me to keep growing, and it allows me to work through those moments of feeling good, starting to feel a little bit like, all right, I got this, and then getting knocked down and becoming humble again and be like, okay, there is a whole lot more that I don't know, and here's this whole new thing. And then I also have the option. I could say, I can't help you, you have to find somebody else. And I could stay at the level where I'm successful, but I don't want to. I always want to keep growing. So I then go out and I research, and I do more research, and I try all these things and I experiment some more. And one of the most important things about learning at any stage is making mistakes. So all of the people I work with, I explain to them that this is something that is an ongoing learning process. Like it's never something that's done. And so when I'm working on something that I'm not sure about, I'll tell them, like, this is something I'm not sure about. So let's try this and see what we get. And it also brings them in as more of a teammate in their own healing. So it again puts them not as student teacher, where I'm up here and they're down here, but it now puts us almost on level path of, I have some more knowledge I'd love to share with you, but let's see how this knowledge is going to help you, and you can help me understand you more, and together we can work on this problem together. So it allows us to work as a team, and it allows them to start feeling more comfortable about making mistakes and opening up more. And again, it helps with the healing process. And all of that communication helps me be a better person too, because it is frustrating to get to a point where I'm like, all right, I'm good. And then you've got this, especially if it's a horse or a dog that can't speak to you in words, they're presenting these things and you're doing all these things that have worked in the past and it's not working. And now you're like, great, now what do I do? So it can be really frustrating. And it can be, especially when you're working with reactive dogs and reactive horses, they show things big. And the only way they know how is lunging, barking, doing behaviors that are not exactly easy to deal with. And horses rearing, spinning, running off. And again, behaviors that are not easy to deal with and can be frightening. And now I have to figure out, okay, how do I deal with this? And how do I not also get triggered myself, get frustrated, get anxious, and get fearful myself when these behaviors show up? So it's a constant balancing act, and it's a constant humbling experience of doing these things, making mistakes, and working on my own stuff, because all of these things, every time there's a new challenge, it's going to highlight my triggers and it's going to highlight my shortcomings. And then I'm going to have to work on myself, because I can't effectively fix anything if I'm not fixing myself. So it does sometimes bring out my temper. I have a super temper, and it's like lightning fast, that Irish temper that's like explode and then done. But that explosion is scary for a lot of animals and people. So I work on that constantly, of feeling the build up to it and being able to regulate my nervous system before it gets to the explosion point. So all of these things would be kind of a negative if I let them go, but because they're showing my shadow side, or the things that are not as fun to deal with and talk about, because it's starting to show those things, it gives me the opportunity to understand them better and heal them more. And then it also gives me the opportunity to share my own journey with that, because I think, and I know, there's a lot of shame that's built up around temper and anger and these emotions that really do love us the most. Like anger, when that pops up, that's something that's telling you with no question that your core value and something that is really important to your soul is being attacked. And because the anger comes out, it forces us to look at, okay, what's going on? And when we have all the shame put on anger, we just repress it. And as we repress it, we get depressed, and then we shut ourselves down. So being able to express anger, but express it in a healthy way, and figure out how that is, and take away that shame of being angry, is such a huge thing that I'm working through, and then we'll be able to help others work through as well.
Yeah, that's so truly said about the anger. Even I had anger issues before. I had a very short temperament. Um, so, so for me, meditation and grounding exercises helped me a lot. But just because you were sharing all the things, one thing that popped up in my head, that, okay, do you follow any practices to guard yourself from all that negative energy which sometimes might be coming through someone, or maybe you had a bad day or anything? Do you follow any practices that help you guard yourself and make you like stand up next day?
Yeah, there is a lot of being aware of where I'm at. And now it's easier because I'm starting to learn more about the nervous system and the signals my body is giving me. And I'm more in tune with the feeling. So I can feel when I start getting prickly, and I can feel when I start getting electric. And those are my signals that I'm starting to get stressed. I'm starting to get anxious. And when I start to feel that, and I feel it in my gut and I feel it in my solar plexus, that I get this just like, it feels like it's vibrating. And when I start feeling these things that I just feel like outwardly, I can just feel like I have spikes on me. It just feels like my energy is just so spiky. And I'm like, okay, I have to back out. And so when I start feeling that, I know I'm getting to the point where I'm getting overwhelmed. and I need to take a step back. And whether that means that I need to take a break from whatever I'm doing and go listen to a podcast, go listen to some music, go take a hot shower, go do something where I can just breathe and not have anybody else reliant on my reactions. So I have to completely remove myself, because as a trainer, I tend to have animals that need a lot of support from me. So when I'm in that mode, if my animals are around, it's when I'm sitting on my bed in a room watching a movie or listening to music. So it's not anything that they're going to be triggered by anything, because at that state, I'm not going to be able to help them, and their reaction is going to trigger me worse. So I really have to remove myself from everything and do some breathing and get myself back to a point where I'm like, okay, and get that nice peaceful, I call it the warm, empty feeling. Like when my solar plexus and my gut just feels like it's just a very, and it's hard to explain other than warm and empty, but it just feels like there's space again. Like I can breathe. And I learned this really cool thing that was helping me catch this earlier, was the fascia in our body, which is the membrane that connects our muscles to skin and bone and all of our organs and things through our body. And there's a big one that they call the skin bag, which is basically the outer bag of fascia that connects the skin to the muscle and the body. And then there's another one inside that connects all of our organs. And the connection points are at the back of the tongue and at the anus, and then in the middle of the organs. So when we are stressed, our fascia will tighten, and it brings all of our organs in tight, getting ready to do whatever we need to do. It's a protective method. So when that's happening and the fascia tightens, it affects where the tip of our tongue rests in our mouth. So when we are relaxed and we're in the parasympathetic state, the tip of our tongue will be resting at the top roof of our mouth. And when we're in fight or flight or arousal, high excitement, anything like that, our tip of our tongue will be resting behind our front teeth on the top. And then when we're in depression, functional freeze, shut down, our tongue will be resting behind our front bottom teeth. And so that little trick has been huge, because now if I'm not aware of my energy, which I'm not always, I don't think, there's very few people that are aware of their energy all the time. I can just check in with my tongue and I'd be like, all right, where am I? Oh, okay. My tongue's starting to creep forward. I'm going to bring it back. And it's kind of like that Superman pose where you can put your hands on your hips and it triggers your brain to release some happy chemicals. You can do the same thing with your tongue. So if you bring your tongue back to the roof of your mouth, the tip of your tongue, and do some breathing, it releases the fascia, it releases the organs. And I'm guessing that's why it feels like there's a warm, empty space, because there literally is more space around my gut. So just by doing that is a huge self-regulating step that allows me to take a moment, get back, and then go back into whatever it was in a better mindset, where I can, again, now I can access the thinking part of my brain rather than the reactionary part of my brain.
Wow. I'm going to next time to check with my tongue where it is to identify what is going on with me. That was a really helpful tip. So from your conversation, I understood that you live with a lot of animals. I want to know more about which animals you have and how is your connection with them, because they are with you and it's a special bond because they live with you.
Yeah. So I have my 4 dogs and they live in the house with me. I have 5 horses, 8 to get total on the property. So I have 2 students that have their horses here. So there's 8 horses on the property. And then I have my 16 goats. So, so I've got a little farm, and the dogs see me the most because I'm around them almost all the time, unless I'm not at the house or they're not with me at work. But so they deal with the most, probably. They deal with all of my fluctuations, and they deal with all of when I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when I'm happy, when I'm sad. They take all of it. So the dogs are really amazing because they allow me to have those moments, and they show me the moments where they're like, I'm not so sure I want to be around you right now, but they show me quietly and they just like, I'm going to take my space. And I'm like, okay, you do that. I'm going to get myself back. And then as I get myself back, then they like start to come around and they cuddle and it's kind of like a little congratulations, you've got yourself back in order. Good job. So they're really wonderful. And all of my dogs have very different personalities. So I learned something really important from all of them. I have my Carlos, who's a pity bulldog mix. I call him my little Buddha dog because he's just a little Zen puppy. And he's just so chill, and everything he does, he's just like, all right. And he's very sweet, and he loves to cuddle, and he's a nice big, he's like 60 pounds, and he loves to come in and just lay on me, and he allows me to just really like bear hug him, and he loves it. So he's my one dog that if I'm struggling and really need to hug something, he's like, okay. And so I can like really hug him. My little dog Lily is very active, and she kind of requires a little bit for her love. So, I mean, she always loves me, but it's more of a, what are you going to do for me? It's kind of a female bond. So she's very different with, like I have to do things that are good for Lily that she enjoys doing for her to then do something that's good for me. So it's very interactional relationship with her. And then I have Cosmos, who is my lab puppy, who is a spaz, and he is constantly making me check myself and breathe and bring myself down because I hate anxious energy. Like anxiety itself, and I'm starting to learn this now, just feeling the anxiety in others brings up anger, and it goes back to a fear in me, like from way, way back. Like this is like long time stuff. So him always having that anxious, spazzy energy immediately puts me in that space. So it's a constant, like I have to really work on myself to stay in a good spot. But he is also very sweet. And he's also the dog. I call him the precious moments puppy because he just has this way to look at you, and he has these giant eyes, and he'll melt you too. So he's very sweet, and he loves to be touching me. And if I lose it on him, I'm like, ah, he's like, I'm sorry. And then it's an immediate like, okay. And then he comes over, he's like, I'll do better. So it's a very sweet. And then I have my Paulo, who is my therapy dog, and he is amazing with the programs. He just will go up and quietly lean against somebody, and he's very non-intrusive. He's very worried about making mistakes. So he never wants to do too much. So they're very cool with how they help me and also how they help others, because I can have them as co-teachers in different situations. So they're really amazing. My horses, I have a really amazing herd. They're just super chill and easygoing and a very well-regulated herd, and they love to connect. So they also will show me, like if I'm having a day where I'm stressed and I'm just out there to get done quick, they all just kind of stand back and let me have my space. And they're like, all right, you do you. And the days that I am out to connect and be there and be with them, they are following me around, they're hanging out with me, and they're just being very peaceful and very quiet. And it's just so relaxing to have something you can just go out and breathe with. And they don't expect anything. They're out grazing. They're doing their thing. I can do my thing. So it's a really nice, peaceful place that it's kind of like a standing meditation. It's not something I'm thinking of chants or anything or mantras, but it's just being able to connect to the earth and connect to the horse and connect to nature and just be there. So they offer me that space. And then my goats are, I call them my little devil clowns. I'm either swearing at them or laughing at them. There is no in between. So they are constantly making me work on my patience because they are constantly getting stuck. They're constantly breaking things. They're constantly like, I don't know if you've ever met goats, but they are constantly finding ways to kill themselves. And you're just rescuing goats. That's all I do is rescue goats all the time. They're stuck in the fence. They're stuck on the board. They're stuck in the gate. So it's a very interesting farm, but the goats are also like, it's comedic relief because you watch them and either you have to get really angry or laugh. Like those are the two options with goats. So it does challenge to like, okay, here's where we are today, and just laugh at the situation of like, okay, my goat is stuck in the fence again. And I have a great picture of one of my goats who She loves getting stuck in fences. This is just what she does. Like every half an hour, she's finding a new way to get stuck in a fence. And she has her head stuck in a hay net feeder and she's looking at me smiling. I'm like, okay, this is where we are today. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have never lived with goats. Horses, maybe once when we went on a farm, but I never realized that being so close to an horse is such a situation. Like, no one has told me about this before until I met you, and you actually told it or mentioned about it. And that is really interesting for me. I used to horse ride during my childhood days. After that, I never did it. But yeah, maybe now I will take an opportunity in a very spiritual way, because I had an accident not related to a horse, but a different kind of accident through which I actually don't stop doing something that is where I don't feel comfortable enough, and that's where it comes in. But now hearing you, I will definitely at least go around the horses and check in how I feel and stuff like that. Another question I have is with, like, because I come across a lot of people who have dogs, and I used to work with a shelter. I used to volunteer over there, and there's so much about the breed differentiation. I mean, it's just their personalities, but do you, like, I heard that you have a pit bull mix as well, and there is so much certain not so good things about certain breeds, and I sometimes feel it's just a misconception. And how you addressed all your special bonds with your dogs, that sparked a curiosity. That is the breed thing which people focus highly on. Is this just a misconception, or what is your take on it? What you would like to tell the audience? Or that's a real thing, but again, it's a soul, and it's how every, like, that is what I come up with. But I want to understand from you, that because you're an expert in this. But I had a pit bull mix for a few months, and I felt like he was able to understand me so much, so much. I mean, we got connected so much emotionally, which has never happened with me with any other dog. So yeah, all up to you.
So there is something to be said to the breeds. All of the dogs, we as humans have bred them for specific purposes. So there are certain things that each dog does that is breed specific. So if you have a herding breed, like a border collie, those breeds want to herd, they need a job. And if you don't give them a job, they become very anxious. Same with Jack Russells. They were bred to hunt out rats. So they're bred to think for themselves. And if you don't give them a job or something to do, they become very destructive because they need something to satiate that instinct that we bred into them. So there is parts to the breed. And when you're choosing a dog, you definitely want to choose a dog in relation to the characteristics that the breed has. Does it fit your lifestyle? With a lab, they're very high energy. If you're not somebody who wants to go out and be outside and have a space where they can run and where they can think and where they can sniff and where they can do all of these things, you're going to have a nightmare. So that is not the breed for you. But if you are somebody who likes to go out and hike and do all these things, a lab might be perfect. So there is that level of breed awareness that is important. But then there is in each breed personalities, and there are different personalities, and you'll get the mother and the epigenetics that go into each dog is a really important piece to what you're going to end up with at your home. So if you're choosing a dog that's been in a stressful situation, you may have a dog that has a little bit more anxiety. So a lot of the anxious, or a lot of the shelter dogs will have this anxiety because either their mother was pregnant with them when she was in a stressful situation, and those genes have carried on into the DNA of all of the babies, or they might just be predisposed to being more anxious because of the situations they were in. And that doesn't mean they're going to be a bad dog. It just means that you're going to have to do more patience, confidence building type of things. And that's where like the behavior modification and understanding that side of things comes in. So when you have a high energy dog like a lab mixed with anxiety, you get a dog that's very reactive. And that can be true for pit bulls too, because they're an intense breed. So there is that to keep in mind. But the whole thing about pit bulls are aggressive and, little dogs are soft and cuddly and sweet. That is not true at all. Like it's a huge misconception that all pit bulls are aggressive and that all little dogs are cute, fuzzy, and adorable. It's actually not even close to what it is. And with pit bulls and a lot of the guard breeds, like the boxers and the Rottweilers and the Dobermans, they're very sensitive dogs because they were bred to be close to their humans. And they're bred to be very in tune with their humans in order to do their job well. So as guard dogs, if they weren't in tune with when their person was nervous, they wouldn't be very good at a guard job. They need to be aware of their situation and their environment, which is why with the bully breeds, sometimes you have a hard time getting their focus on you because they're so interested in their environment. And they can be reactive because they're so interested in what's going to happen next and what's over there that it can breed some anxiety. And then you see the lunging and the barking. And because they have these big blockheads and because they are intense dogs and powerful dogs, that's where it starts, the whole aggression thing. And then people have used them for fighting, which didn't help with the whole idea that they're aggressive breed. So in that regard, a lot of that can be changed with how you raise them, how you work with them, how you deal with what they need. So if you're looking for a dog, pit bulls, I love pit bulls and I love boxers, especially for psychiatric service work and this therapy type work, because they are so sensitive and they are so in tune and they know immediately when your energy changes. But on that, you also have to be ready and willing to do the training that goes along with it to make sure that your energy doesn't affect them negatively and doesn't make them more anxious and doesn't make them more reactive. And you have to be willing to do the time and a lot of work, especially when they're young, to get them to disengage from their environment, and a lot of training and a lot of behavior modification. So they're wonderful dogs, but they are dogs that require behavior modification and training and a lot of active work with them.
Can I ask you one more thing? So I have a Schnauzer, he's a miniature Schnauzer and Brussels Griffon mix. What is your take on this breed?
So the Brussels, I don't know anything about. I've seen them and they're adorable, but I haven't worked with any. The Schnauzers, they're terriers, and all terriers were bred for a job. So they are the type of dog that can think for themselves, and they're very smart, which is wonderful on one side and not so wonderful on the other side. So those type of dogs, if you give them a job, whether it's learning new tricks or doing like mat work where they have to go and stay on their spot and then you release them at certain times, and just doing that sort of training where you're giving them some direction, they love it and they thrive on it, and it helps their whole personality. When they don't have any sort of direction, those type of really smart dogs will start to find their own things to do, and it's usually destructive. So just giving them something, and it could be as simple as teaching them tricks or teaching them to go pick up something or teaching them the names of their toys so that they can go and find a specific toy. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It's a lot of stuff you can do at your house. And when you're doing these little sessions, it can be short, like it'd be 5-10 minutes of just doing something, like those puzzle games. There's tons of do-it-yourself food puzzle games on YouTube, all of those sort of things. And especially, I'm not sure specifically what Schnauzers were bred for, but if you look up whether they were bred to hunt rats or something like that, if they were bred for that, they're good at burrowing and they're good at searching for things. So if you can find enrichment games that use that instinct where they have to dig things out and they have to, find food in rolled towels or find things in those toilet paper rolls where they can shred the toilet paper roll and get the things. If you use those instincts with their enrichment games, it'll help regulate their system and make them much happier and calmer.
Yeah, thank you for those tips. He loves searching for things and then bringing it from and then playing tug of war and stuff like that.
So like treasure hunts are good, like hiding their toys around and having them like stay somewhere, go hide things, and then tell them to go find it. All of those sort of things are great.
So, do you offer any certifications with respect to canine or equine, or like what kind of certifications you provide?
So I am working on a hybrid model now, but we do offer an in-person. We are offering to teach people how to run the program that we run. So we have Mirrors, which is the equine-assisted therapy program. And then we have Pause for Joy, which is the canine-assisted therapy program. So people that are interested in facilitating these things, we are happy to teach them. And we bring them through a course that's about a year long, and we give them all of the information that they need for what we do, the science behind it, how the brain heals, the nervous system, somatic healing, how to work with the animals, how to train the animals, how to choose the right animals. So we go through everything. And then we also will help them with the business side of things too, and help them learn how to set up the business and how to, run the business, how to advertise the liability they'll need, insurance they'll need. We'll help them with that piece as well. So that's our big one that's called Equinosity. And that encompasses people who want to teach it on a professional level. And then I have my canine program, which I am now modifying. I was originally going to do it just for psychiatric service dogs, but I'm finding that there's so many people with companion animals that want the same information that I was giving with the psychiatric service dog program, that I'm going to encompass it in one program. And it's called Your Pet, Your Therapist. And we will be teaching people how to not only train their dog and get a good bond with their dog, but also how to understand their needs, understand the body language, how to work together as a team, and how to take the information that the animal is giving them and use it to heal themselves. And if they want to have a psychiatric service dog, if they're in need of that, we will offer an additional piece to it so that we can teach them how to train for public access and for having the tasks that they need for a psychiatric service dog.
Will it be an online program or both hybrid, or will it be completely in person?
So Equinosity will be a hybrid program because there's a lot that you have to do in person that you can't do online, but the majority of the learning with the book stuff and everything will be online. And then the in-person will be a weekend here or a week here where they come and they do intensives with us. With the Your Pet, Your Therapist, that one will have an online program where I'll have a bunch of recorded videos showing all sorts of training games and talking all of the information. And then they'll have the option, if they would like more support, they have the option of doing a one-on-one coaching call with me and we can do Zoom training, or if they're close enough, they can do an in-person training.
Amazing. I recently heard that you also had written a book. Can you share more about that?
So we just put together our first book. Chris Carl, my business partner, thank you. It was very exciting. She was the one that wrote most of this book, and then I helped facilitate some of the activities and some of the information about the animal connection and things. So it is available on Amazon. It's called The Time for Me. And we put together basically the therapy side of what we were doing in our programs and explained a lot of what is happening to your brain, your nervous system, and how it's a natural process. So a lot of our programs, one of our biggest things is making it a judgment-free program and also making it a place where people learn that there isn't a stigma attached to it. It's all natural. We do a lot with education so we can take the stigma out of, PTSD or grief or depression. So people can heal without thinking, oh, I'm broken, I'm this, I'm that. It's not that. It's your brain functioned in a way it was supposed to function, but then it just built a synapse that got repeated and now it's a habit. And so just like anything else, you can change a habit. You can heal from PTSD. You can heal from all of these things. So this is what the book is teaching people how to understand what's happening and the science behind it, and then giving them exercises and journaling prompts to allow them to empower themselves to heal from it and to integrate what they had. Because I think there's a huge, I don't want to call it a benefit because there's no benefit to trauma, but there is a benefit to the survival skills that we learn from trauma, and it gives us superpowers. So being able to integrate what benefits we got from that trauma, the survival skills that we developed, and integrate them into our daily life so that we can not only get better, but we can get beyond where we were before, so that we can become stronger, we can become more able to get the joy in the life that we want.
I really love the title, A Time for Me. It's really like, take some time, read that book, and oh my God, this is amazing. I will definitely read the book, and I will put down the QR code in the description so that people who are interested to read this book, it's available for them. And also, is there any website you have where if the audience wants to reach out, they can reach out to you? Or is there any other way they can reach out? Is it only the website or email, whatever you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, email or website. Our website is heroeshh.com. And that has our programs. I have to update it again. It does have the information, but there's some new things that I'm adding that haven't made it up to the website yet. So I've got to update it a little bit. Should be done before this is out. I should be able to get to that. And then the other way to get a hold of me is you can go through the Facebook page, which is Heroes, Horses, and Hounds on Facebook, or you can email us, which is heroeshhtraining@gmail.com.
So we are at our final section. Is there anything you wish everyone knew about the healing potential, about working with animals? Can you share about that, or anything you want to share about audience? Please share it.
So one of the biggest things that have come out of all of this is that play and fun is such a huge part of healing. And healing, you will have times where it's hard, but it doesn't have to all be hard. And there can be joy in healing. And so I really want to start promoting this idea that when you're healing, it's about acceptance, and it's taking the stigma out of it, and it's learning how to play, learning how to enjoy being a kid again, and just being curious and exploring and getting back into those things that we used to do as children that made us really happy. And just doing that is such a huge piece to healing, of allowing ourselves to find joy and allowing ourselves to play and allowing ourselves to create. All of these things are so important to being happy humans.
I almost feel like we need a part two. I have so many more questions to ask, and because of the time constraint, I'm not able to ask you in this one. If you are for it, I would definitely like a part two of this one. But yeah, for today, thank you so much. I'm truly grateful. I love the conversation. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about how animals help us heal, and how, like, at least I learned how I can understand myself more. And there's so many things I got an insight about it. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights, knowledge, tips with us. And yeah, any last words you want to say?
I would definitely love to do a part two. So anytime you want to do that would be great. And yeah, I love sharing this because this is something, I went through my own troubles, and luckily I've always had that curious mind, that scientific mind. I love doing experiments. I love finding out why. So when I started to run into things, I started to really enjoy peeling back the pieces and finding out why. But I know that's not something that's out there and very accessible. So, yeah, I just love being able to share what I've been through and being able to share that I am not perfect at all. I make mistakes all the time. And almost every good thing in my life came from some mistake or some bad decision that I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. But because I did that, all of these things unraveled, and now I'm in this amazing place. So yeah, So happy I've made all the mistakes I've made.
That's a great way to look into the mistakes. And well, thank you so much. And yeah, have a good one. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Wow, wasn't that conversation just amazing? I learned so much about how animals like horses and dogs mirror our emotions and help us reconnect with ourselves. It's incredible to think about the wisdom they share with us in such a subtle ways. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel, which is an experiment with self. And if you are curious about learning more, check out the description for the links to Colin's books, programs, and website. Let me know in the comments how animals have impacted your life. I would love to hear your stories. As we step into a brand new year, let's carry forward these lessons of connection, healing, and self awareness. Wishing you and your loved ones a joyful, mindful, and fulfilling 2025. Until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and remember to nurture yourself and those around you. Happy New Year and see you soon!